Chapter 35, Spring of the fourth year of the Jiangyo period. This was the first time Blind Five Bamboo had ever smiled, or rather, it was the first time the 16-year-old Fan Xian had ever seen his Uncle Five Bamboo smile, at the very moment when he had mentioned his mother's year. Blind Five Bamboo's ease of exposure beyond the black cloth didn't look old, but it was always cold, with very few expressions showing emotion, and even harder to see descriptions such as horror, sadness, or sorrow. Even more so, there was no smile. So when he remembered the past events back then when he and his lady first arrived in Kyoto, Kigo, and tugged the corners of his lips to turn upwards, it seemed a bit rusty and awkward. But even so, it seems that the person who never smiles, occasionally showing gentleness, is like a beautiful and incomparable snow lotus flower suddenly blossoming out of the ice that has not melted for 1,000 years above the cliff. Gentle, beautiful, incomparable. It was not easy to wake up from the disorientation. Five Bamboo has already returned to normal, faintly replied. Know that the young lady called Yi Qingmei is not much. The side of those idle people just call her young lady, but Yi Qingmei this name, even now, think. And Kyoto is also very famous. Yes? Fan Xian's eyes widened. He felt that Five Bamboo's sentence was somewhat inconsistent, since not many people knew that Mom's name was Yi Light Eyebrow. Then why was the name Yi Light Eyebrow quite famous? The reason why he would think this way was because he didn't know about the passage of golden words above the stone plaque at the entrance of the supervisory academy, and the inscription that fell. Tell me about my father. Fan Xian's eyes flickered, not knowing what he was thinking. I only promised to speak about the young lady. Well, you are pretty slick, Gojo-san. Before you were born, I had a serious illness and forgot a lot of things. Fan Xian covered his mouth and laughed. Uncle is even more of a rogue than I am. Well, then forget it and talk about something else. What did that mom look like? Five Bamboo thought for a moment and said, very beautiful. Although his voice didn't speak with too many complex emotions mixed in, Fan Xian always thought that when he said those three words, Five Bamboo looked sincere. He smiled slightly, rubbed his hands together, and sighed, so it's a very beautiful girl. Although Five Bamboo's level of storytelling was extremely low, from the simple words, Fan Xian could sense how colorful the woman's story itself should have been in Kyoto back then. An extremely strong urge arose in his heart to go to Kyoto. He must go to Kyoto himself. Five Bamboos gestured, signaling Fan Xian to stand up and follow him. Fan Xian stood up with some curiosity and walked to the end of the room, watching as Five Bamboo gently pressed a few times on the square stone wall, which suddenly emitted a slight sound before parting from it, revealing a secret room within. Fan Xian was surprised as he followed Five Bamboo inside. There was nothing in the secret room. A thin layer of dust lay on the floor, and a box was placed very casually in the corner. It was conspicuous because there was nothing else to be seen in the secret room except for this box. It was a black leather case, about the length of an adult's arm, and not very wide, so it looked rather slender. No one knows that before Miss and I went to Kyoto, we used to spend some time in Tanyuzu. This chest is what Miss left behind. I've helped you keep it until now, and you'll keep it for yourself in the future. Fan Xian's heart stirred slightly as he walked forward, brushing the dust off the black leather case with his hand and looking at the mouth of the case there. He realized that it was a piece of brass-like cover that covered the lock. He was very curious about what Mom left for herself, but unexpectedly turned over half a day, and found that that cover was not even twisted. There was no way to open this box. No key. Five Bamboos saw him busy and reminded him. Fan Xian hung his head and said, didn't say so earlier, so what's the use of giving me a chest that can't be opened? Before you came to Tanyu to hold you, the key was left there because you needed to convince certain people that you were dead. Fan Xian thought to himself that this kind of bridge was a bit too old, and raised an eyebrow, taking out the slender dagger he never left his side from the sheath on the side of his calf, and aiming it at the top of the suitcase to gesture at where it would be easy to strike. No need to try, this case is a lot sturdier than you think. Being able to hear that Uncle Wuju was very much against his violent opening, Fan Xian smiled and stopped his movements, withdrawing the dagger and patting that chest, shaking his head and sighing. There might be hundreds of thousands of taels of silver notes in there. It's a pity, it's a pity. Then he lifted the box and tried the weight, and found that it was quite heavy, and his curiosity inevitably grew a few points heavier. Where's the key? Kyoto. Another very broad answer. Gojutsu turned away, ready to walk out of the secret room. Seeing that he hadn't noticed him, the thieving Fan Xian's eyes rolled around twice, his right elbow slightly bent, and he fiercely imprinted a palm right above the chest. This palm contained all of his power, domineering, breaking the wind and falling. A muffled bang echoed in the secret room, actually stirred up the dust in the sky, hiding most of the light from the oil lamp. Five Bamboo's figure coldly turned around and looked at Fan Xian. Fan Xian was now staring daggers at his own palm, and on top of that black box, there was not a single trace left except for some dust. It seemed that in order to open this mysterious chest, one must go to Kyoto. Fan Xian thought silently, planning when he would be able to leave Tanyuzu, thinking that his father in Kyoto would not always let him stay in old age by the sea. At this time, he did not know that the person sent by Earl Sinan to pick him up was already on his way. In the spring of the 4th year of the Jiambli era, Tu Zijing was sitting in the only tavern in Tanyu Port, wiping the sweat from his forehead and looking at one of the walls of the tavern. On that wall was a piece of paper framed with good material. The paper was of good quality. On it were many words copied densely in lower case. The handwriting was obviously from the hand of the great calligrapher of the clerical pavilion, Mr. Pan Ling. The style was elegant and godly, upright and pure. If placed in Kyoto, Lord Pan Ling a piece of work of this size, at least to sell 300 taels of silver, and Tanyu Port is remote, so properly framed, like a god on the wall, is not surprising. But the content written on it was really unsuitable for decorating the doorway. Because what was written on it was all messy news. Yes, this was the legendary newspaper. There are only 2 newspapers in the whole Tanyu Port. The one of the parent's official is naturally placed in the government office, and the one that the tavern owner got his hands on was quietly bought at a high price from the count's subordinate. The general public cannot see this new thing, so feel extraordinarily magical, coupled with the handwriting of Lord Pan Ling, so the tavern owner bought, hung on the wall, as their own store treasure. But he also did not know, this newspaper is the other house Fan Young Master stole out to sell, and Fan Young Master has sold a total of 24 copies to the rich merchants in the city, well earned a handful of obscene money. And Fuji Zijing will soon go to meet with the young Master Fan.